Okay, guys, I'm just going to go for it. 5 things we learned from this Liverpool versus Southampton game where Liverpool got away from Anfield with 2 penalties and a pretty decent goal, frankly. And I think a lot of people after this, they've already fumed. They've already fumed about the penalties. There's already talk about like, hey, you won a COVID title. Now you're going to win a penalty title, because everyone tries to discount everyone else's titles, especially when they know that they mean something. It became a lot less important for us to discount Man City's titles when we basically realized that they thought it was about serially winning them. And a lot of fans were talking about not even being that impressed to go to Wembley anymore. So we stopped caring in that same way. But people, believe me, really care about taking away whatever shine it is that Liverpool have on this title, because they know how much it means to Liverpool. And frankly, they're not going to be able to do that, because if Liverpool won that title, if Liverpool get over the line with these 6 more wins that they need, or whatever series of results it is that they need to get there, it would be monumental to this side. And we're not here to talk about that today. But I think what that does do is it offers a weight to some of these games. It offers like a pressure, I think, in some of these matches that very often, I think other teams have crumbled under this kind of pressure. There are certainly other teams who've collapsed under this level of pressure. And so with Liverpool, obviously there are also Liverpool sides who've lost out during pressure periods. So there's a bit of a fear sometimes that players won't step up or whatever. And the fear sort of maybe started to hit at Anfield, mainly because in the first half, it was a little bit undercooked. It was a little bit, should we say, underwhelming from Liverpool. And I get that. And I understand why that might happen after a game like PSG. But in the second half, when they were reminded of what really this game was, the team stepped up. And it was an incredibly impressive performance for me in the second half. Not that the first half statistically wasn't impressive, but the energy and the eye test in the second half felt a lot more impressive. Huge part of that for me was Harvey Elliott. Harvey Elliott's adaptability, Harvey Elliott's technical ability, Harvey Elliott's movement, Harvey Elliott's interchange, Harvey Elliott's pushing on, Harvey Elliott's knowing when to sit was really impressive. But the thing that really impressed me about Harvey, and I think the thing that a lot of people have put a question mark next to for quite some time, was his physicality. Harvey showed great pace yesterday, which is something that we knew that was in there, but with him still growing, with him still being a young man, we didn't know what the true extent of that pace was. It's not the maximum pace that we know from someone like Mo Salah, but when he's accelerating into that midfield, it really works for me. Equally, on the other side of that, he looks like he's been on that Barcelona beef up that a lot of these smaller players seem to go on. He's come back stronger. He's clearly come back with a focus and a center of gravity, which really works well for him in these games. It puts him a lot more weighty into tackles. It means he can hold a lot more people off. It makes him slightly better at just nipping the ball around people and moving around them, because he's no longer like able to just be pushed out the way. And he's also able to control the movement that he has a lot better. That's something that I think we've seen work in the slot period for a number of players. A lot of them have looked like they've become a lot better at controlling their body in that way. Not only Salah, not only Gravenberch, those kind of guys. Liverpool have worked on the movement of their players, and it's now getting through to Harvey Elliott as well. And I like that, right? That's a good thing. Secondly, right, there is this idea that our fullbacks are somehow cooked. I agree that like a fullback is cooked if they don't perform, but there are still games where our fullbacks have a lot of say. Trent has games where he looks very energetic. Trent has games where he looks low energy. Trent has games where he looks in pain and he can't move. Trent has games where he looks much more free-flowing, and moments in those games where you're like, yes, that is the player that we want. He looked like that yesterday for Liverpool against Southampton. I loved it. I love seeing those kind of performances, but I love the same from someone like Andy Robertson. I love the same from someone like Tsimikas. And when it was Robbo and then Trent on the other side, and obviously the 2 centre defenders and Alisson at the back, it felt reassured. It felt interchangeable. It felt assured to me as a performance for Liverpool. And it was probably the first time this season where I've really felt very confident about those guys as a unit. Not because, necessarily I trust them, more because I felt that I was seeing them move into that trust that we previously had for them, and also that they didn't really fear Southampton. Liverpool certainly have a lack of fear when it comes to certain sides in the league, and Southampton is one of them, which is probably why we underestimated them, which is probably why Anfield was quiet, which is probably why we got in this position in the first place. But a lot of that came from, and the final big point that I want to make here is about Slot and his changes. And Slot's ability to manipulate and control games is exceptional. It's one that in a previous era we manipulated and controlled through energy. Now we manipulate and control through so many different efforts, essences, ideas. And it's not just a couple of players anymore. We're able to change a game through any one of these players. Pick a midfielder, you can do that. Pick the shape of the midfield, and we'll emphasize one of those three or two of those three midfielders. Someone else sits. Bring on Wataru Endo at the end of a game. We haven't conceded, not that we conceded under Klopp in that period either, but he's the human victory cigar in many of those instances. And that won't always be the case. Who knows? I mean, maybe we'll sell him at some point and maybe he'll keep that record. But there are going to be games where people get through. There are going to be games where we're really under pressure. And I'd love to see whether Slot brings him on in those big pressure games, whether it is just to close out these solid defensive performances. But it also changed up front and it changed in the midfield. Elliott's movement, Elliott's interchange was influenced by the fact that he had a change of position and shape next to what Slot was changing and shaping, right? He was able to drop a little bit deeper, push Trent more into the midfield, and those two were interchanging throughout the game. Then there was a number of changes in midfield with Alexis McAllister and those kind of guys just adding that little bit more energy that we needed, that little bit more bite, which we didn't really show against PSG. You could tell some of these guys were a little bit annoyed about that PSG performance. But Slot has changed that shape so much and changed that feeling that Liverpool had, where it was like we either felt like we were on or off in previous eras under Klopp and under a couple of other managers, where it was like, is it our day? Whereas now, the final real big point I want to make is Liverpool understand it's a game of attrition. It's a game of pushing. It's a game of pressing and wearing the opposition out. And those people who are talking about Liverpool being the penalty side or whatever, teams who are exhausted give away penalties because they make silly decisions. Being fit, being ready, being prepared, being rotated is part of winning a title. And I think, Arteta was referencing that himself. He was talking about previously it was A1, B1, C1. Then it became A1, A2, A3. They were all plan A's for Arteta. And Liverpool have moved into that where whatever shift we make, they feel like plan A. Whether it's us shifting back and accepting some of that pressure the opposition is putting on us, whether it's us knowing that we're good enough to then press the opposition back when we feel like it, whether it's us having surprises for that opposition and being able to sit on them, not being too excited, not being too emotionally invested, not being overly wrapped up in the game and where the opposition are at in order not to be able to do what it is that we need to do, enact the moments and the movements that we need from Slot sides in order to win the game. We've changed in that disposition. That demeanor is now very different, and that works for us now. That's a really effective way of managing games. It's why Gary Neville, it's why a number of old school guys are now talking about Liverpool in such favourable ways, is because it's reminiscent of those old school Premier League days where guys were going, hey, we've got 3 or 4 different ways that we play and we shift it depending on what the opposition do. Before, it felt a lot more dogmatic. It felt a lot more prescriptive from the manager, and that there was a little bit less reactivity, even though there was reactivity, than there is in this Slot period, right? It works for Liverpool in that sense. And we did that against Southampton. We did that against PSG. We did that the game before that. And we'll do it against Newcastle. It's weird to read sometimes. It's weird to see a game that's played in that way. And the stats don't always reflect dominance in that way. People can talk about how many passes you have. Luis Enrique was talking about that. They outpassed us. They outshot us. They outpossessed us. But we were willing to give them some of those things because of our self-assured nature. And the same went for Southampton. They were willing to give up a lot. But we had a self-assuredness which was different to the one that felt the opposite way around with PSG coming on to us, right? We knew what our MO was. We knew what our disposition, our demeanor, our idea of our own team was. We don't defend out of being not sure. We defend out of necessity. We defend out of the idea of the ebb and flow of the game and us controlling that flow. We decide when we rest, not you. We decide when we attack, not you. That is very different to being a side who all out attack and just impose themselves on another team, right? That is different from a team who all out defend and then just impose their defense on the opposition. These are choices that are made by Slot. And those choices and those changes are massive for us. They make a massive impact on the way that the team perform, and they make a massive impact on the way that we surprise oppositions, but also humble oppositions. And the humble elements of this team are the thing which are taking us over the line with that. That's where Harvey's fantastic. That's where the midfielders learn to be even more humble. That's where the hardworking nature of Konate and Van Dijk shines through. The same for Alisson, right? It wasn't that it was like, I'm too good for this. You didn't see him shouting at anyone. You didn't see anyone panicking when Alisson was making those big saves, or what felt like big saves, because a lot of them were very normal saves to him. A lot of them were very regular Alisson saves that we as Liverpool fans are used to seeing, but are very surprising to oppositions. We are box office because we're used to seeing this, whereas other people are not. We put in these performances week in, week out because of the class and the quality within this side. That's not necessarily normal to everyone else, and it's why other people freak out because they don't watch Liverpool week in, week out. It's why Liverpool at the Parc des Princes, didn't freak out. We just continued with our mission. We knew what it was that we needed to achieve, and we got over the line for the first half. Game done, game not done, And now we take them back to Anfield, a very different proposition. And sure, Luis Enrique was talking about, stepping on us and, continuing more of the same energy, continuing more of the same game plan. Well, if they do that, that will require the best, and I mean the very best out of PSG, and for Liverpool to be as bad again and not able to exploit those aspects. That would require the midfield to look second best at every ball, the strikers to look second best at every ball, Slot to not change that shape, react to that first leg against PSG. And we know that PSG and Liverpool are going to change the dynamic in that second leg. Luis Enrique being one of those great Barca prescriptives that, we play the game this way, this is the way the game is played. And if anything else changes away from that, then it's not good, it's negative, it's bad football. Well, we know Slot takes from the PSG, from the Pep Guardiola, but therefore the similar ideas to what PSG do. He can react to those in this second leg. And he does that. He did that against Southampton. He's a reactive manager in a proactive way. And that feels weird to say. It sounds very cliched, but it's something that as Liverpool fans, we know instantly makes sense to us and something we've got very used to. I look forward to seeing you at Anfield on Tuesday. I look forward to seeing you at Wembley on the weekend. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments below about the 5 points that I've picked out there as to what got us past Southampton and what potentially will get us past PSG. And I'll talk to you guys in a little while. Much love.